Hey, everybody, welcome back. I've got another great panel of authors, and I'm just really excited because the Author ROI Lab that I'm going to be talking about in a minute, the deadline for the early enrollment is August 1st. So you can go check that out at authorroilab.com. If you're thinking about writing a book for 2027, don't write a whole book without knowing who it's for and whether they even want it. And with that, let's introduce this week's episode. You've probably heard that you need to solve a problem for your readers. That is good advice. But here's the question I wish more aspiring authors would ask before they start writing. Does your ideal reader know they have this problem? Some problems are obvious, and others aren't. Your reader may be frustrated, stuck, or dissatisfied without realizing what's actually causing it. If your book is written for someone who doesn't recognize the problem you're solving, your message may never land the way you intended. That's why understanding your audience matters so much. You need to know how they describe their challenges, what they're already searching for, and whether they're actively looking for a solution. Sometimes the book you want to write isn't the book your audience is ready to read. These are exactly the kinds of conversations we have in the Author ROI Lab. Before you spend months writing a book, we'll help you think through who your ideal reader is, whether your message will resonate with them, and how your book can support your business goals. If you're thinking about writing a business book, learn more at authorroilab.com. And now, let's meet today's panelists. Joel Benge wrote, "Be a Nerd That Talks Good. Transform Your
Be a
Technical
Nerd That
Knowledge
Talks Good
into Powerful Messages, a practical guide that helps technical experts communicate complex ideas in ways that engage audiences, build credibility, and inspire action." Lauren Sanders wrote, "Empathy is Not a Weakness, and Other Stories from the Edge, a collection of personal and professional stories that challenge common misconceptions about empathy and explore the strength, courage, and leadership that comes from embracing it." Stephanie McAuliffe wrote, "The Impact of Silence, Reclaim the Sovereignty of Your Soul, a reflective and empowering book that helps readers recognize the cost of silence and reclaim their voice, truth, and personal sovereignty." With that, I want to welcome the whole panel. Kick things off, Joel. Welcome to the show, and give us a little bit of a sense of who you wrote your book for.
Sure. So I wrote the book for myself about 15 years ago. So I started as a creative theater education of video games and became an IT guy, got stuck in the muck. And then luckily somebody goes, "You're a nerd, but you talk good. So we're going to make you a comms guy." And I ended up on the outside in branding and marketing and communications. And I realized that the person who needed the most help was not another marketing person. It was the technical founder. It was the subject matter expert. It was the person who keeps facing those blank stares when they're trying to present. So I took what I learned in marketing and branding and made it really easy and fun for just the average smart person. Because you know how the worst person at talking about technology is the person closest to it. So and I literally work with messaging. I call myself a message optician. Message specs is what I do. I bring clarity to messaging. So one of the biggest things I'm excited about the topic is a lot of people know there's something wrong, but they don't know what the problem is. And so I hope that we really get an opportunity to dig into that today.
That's awesome. I think that your audience is so clear. Like, I feel like people must see themselves in your descriptor like right away, and that's really handy. And I'm sure also I feel like I can imagine people that need what you're doing right away. I love the clarity. Lauren, how about you? Who did you have in mind when you were writing your book?
Well, to tell you the truth, I am on a mission to rid the world of toxic leaders. And it started when I used to be one early in my career. My book is for leaders who are completely exhausted from trying to care about people and feeling like that doesn't matter at all. And it's for leaders who also doubt that they even have the ability to be empathetic. And I promise you, it's not impossible because I was able to overcome that. And anyone who has ever had the terrible opportunity of working for a toxic leader and needs to know that good leadership does exist. So ultimately, I would say I wrote it for the leader who wants to hold high standards without losing their humanity in the process.
Do you find that you tend to work in certain sectors or types of organizations more than others right now? Or is this sort of more universally needed?
I find that I have a lot of access in the spaces of IT, HR, and the talent management side of HR as well. But somehow I've been embraced by the IT space. And I think it comes down to the fact that both IT and HR are spaces where nobody actually thinks you exist until there's a problem and the world is burning down. And then all of a sudden you're super necessary.
Yes, and so I could see how your leadership skills would come in handy there. That's great. Stephanie, let's bring you in to share a little bit about your audience for your book.
The audience for my book is the person who has been on a healing journey. And one of the things we sometimes do is look to our family to give us validation of what it is that we're working on. And many times they would be very happy with us continuing to be silenced, because us giving a voice to what has happened under our roof actually would cause them to have to look in their own mirror. And so we are silenced from very early ages. It continues in through our corporate career, of which I worked on Wall Street for 27 years in systems. So I resonate with Lauren and Joel's books. And so this is practices the science and the woo of reclaiming our voice without needing the validation or support from those that we love who may not support us on our journey.
And Stephanie, is this your first book?
Second.
And was your other book also a solo book?
It was.
Yeah. Any lessons learned as you approach this book? I'm just curious. Like, a first book is a lot largely an unknown. But you went a little more eyes open into the second project. How did you approach that differently? Was there anything that kind of stood out to you?
It was being less connected with the wounds, which there was still a bit of that in my first book. And this was really speaking from the wisdom of my scars. So I had been through many of these things, and our healing continues until we turn into dust. And yet it was bringing a very different perspective, because I had shifted so much in the 5 or 6 years from the first book to the second book.
Yeah.
So it's really one of more of empowering rather than being in the wound.
We're going to come back to talk about your success getting getting that second book out there. But let's come back over here. Joel, is this your first book?
It is, yeah. And it was a total accident.
And so at this time that we're recording this, it was about a year ago that it came out. I saw it was like sometime early last summer. So how was it received, the accidental book?
It was received really well. So in my consulting and working with clients, I designed a card game that I use as kind of a forcing mechanism to help my clients talk about their technologies. And somebody goes, you should put a video together to explain to people how to use it. Then you can sell the cards. And there's a lot that I draw on Aristotle, a lot of philosophy, a lot of neuroscience in my workshops. And I kept saying, I have to include this and I have to include that. And, I got 10 or so pages in and I'm like, oh shoot, I'm writing a book. So a lot of things got put on pause. I did a lot of rediscovery of, where this methodology and all these learnings over my career came from. And when I started beta reading it with some people, they were like, this is incredible. This is changing the way I think about my company. I work with a lot of startups. And so I really had a great test pool of beta readers. I think I'm kind of working myself a little bit out of a consulting, because you could pick up this book and do pretty well, without hiring a consultant or a marketer or, I say abdicating your responsibility for your message to an outsider. And it's fun. I put a lot of my personality into it. I'm a very outgoing person, and people say, yeah, your voice really comes through. So I'm already thinking about book 2 based on this.
That's awesome. Oh, we're definitely going to revisit that part of the question. But I wanted to say how lovely it is if people are hearing your voice in your writing, because that's hard to. It's like finding a way to write authentically in a way that feels right to you. I had that transition from academic writing to my first book, and which is partly why I put off writing for a while, because I was like, oh, I didn't like the academic writing, and when I realized I could write it the way I speak, it was like game changer for me.
It drove the editors crazy because I say I'm a nerd that talks good, and they go, no, speaks well. I'm like, you don't gotta speak well, you just gotta talk good. So I did push back on a lot of grammatical edits and stylistic edits because it's
It
me
was
in a
you.
book. It's not,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just me.
And I want to go back to that next other piece you said about like the idea that you put yourself out of consultancy. I also write very actionable books. My latest book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue. People have followed the process. My favorite testimonial came from someone who wanted to hire me, but had already kind of gotten burnt on budget, and so didn't have the money because she had misspent some of her funds on a different possible marketing scheme, and then followed the process of my book, did all the things diligently, got 70 plus, I think 74 written reviews for her book, got on a Zoom to record a video testimonial, talked about how well the process worked, and ended with, in the next book I'm starting by hiring Robbie because that was a lot of work. And I was like, yes. So she's now like a great referral partner.
I'm under no disillusion, that this is going to replace me, but it's definitely, I work with a lot of people who can't afford me. And I'm like,
Right.
look, just start with the book and give me a phone call. And then we can chat, and then maybe we do something smaller. And it's really been a great relationship opener for me.
I love that. I definitely want to always talk about how a book sort of relates back to a business. Lauren, you, I'm looking at this list. You've got a lot of reviews. So I'm comparatively, I mean, I say a lot, but like contextualize the fact that to even get 20 reviews is often a criteria that authors aren't meeting. You have 44 global ratings and 34 written reviews. The book's been out for a little while. That's a very clear effort. So is this your first book? And B, did you set out to have it kind of tie back to a business?
It is my first book, and I'm in the middle of writing the second one,
Woo!
which is going to be called Who Let Me In Here, and it's about imposter syndrome. But I had a lot of guidance for the first book. I published with Jen Grace. She was fantastic. But I think what really shook me a little bit in terms of the reviews is I didn't ask for a lot of the reviews that I got. The book kind of took on a life of its own, and some of the reviews are from people who have reported to me, who solidified that I do what I said I do in the book, and that I actually practice the pieces of work that happened. And the book is really a culmination of how I went from being a toxic leader to being a better leader, and the tools and processes that I used to do that. But probably my favorite review is from someone who didn't read the book, which was kind of hilarious. I happened to be at dinner by myself. I was doing a keynote, and I wanted to go to dinner close by. I went to a Benihana, and I was the only person. So they sat me with this young couple who I got to talking to and heard their story. They had just been married. They had a lot of life trauma. They had been through quite a lot. And I picked up their dinner and thought nothing of it. It was just, I'm like, these are nice kids. They could probably use a break. Let me pay for their dinner. And then I just went on about my business, and then this review popped up. It starts off with, we haven't read the book yet, but it talked more about my character, which I think, as much as I love every review of everybody who's ever read the book, that probably touched me in a different way. And that's the imprint that I want to leave behind more than anything else.
I think what's wonderful is that the review got up there, but what I will tell everyone who's listening that unfortunately a lot of those kinds of reviews aren't going to get up anymore. Amazon has gotten so much stricter about like if people say they know you or anything. It's really interesting. I'm glad it got up there, but it's getting harder and harder to get these kinds of reflections on the author reviews up there. But I love it that someone saw you sort of in the wild. I try to tell my kids, I caught you being awesome. So someone caught you being awesome, and they wanted to share that you are like actually that way, and that you're people who reported to you. I thought it was gonna be people who reported to you when you were not the kind, empathetic leader, writing reviews, being like, "Why didn't she write this book sooner?" That would be great too. I love this, Lauren. And Lauren, why a second book? You've proven to yourself you could do book one. Why are you going to put yourself through all this again?
I think between the time that I published the first book and started writing the second book, I got my ICF coaching certification, and I keep coming across leaders who consistently tell me that they feel like imposters. And I really wanted to dig into, I'm a researcher by nature. I want to learn everything about everything, lifelong learner. And I just started looking at how many people in the world suffer from imposter syndrome or some semblance of whatever we want to call it, and how common it is, and how we often think it's everybody else who knows what they're doing, and we're the only ones who are suffering from this terrible thing. And so really the second book starts with a lot of how you feel at any moment. Somebody with clickety shoes and a clipboard is going to come up to you wherever you are and be like, "Excuse me, you don't belong here." And it turned from writing about imposter syndrome and belonging into, I started digging into neurodiversity as a component of this. And then I started looking at how racialized and other underserved minorities have things that play into this even bigger than what happens at work or in life in general, and how all of that stuff in our background really makes a difference in the culmination of how we feel in the world, and whether we, even when we're told we belong, whether we feel like we do.
Yeah, it's this month I've been organizing at a conference, which I can't even attend. It's the National Speakers Association annual event called Influence. And 2018, I started the You Belong Ice Cream Social for those who wonder if they belong at the event in the association, and for those who want others to feel that they do. And I share that similarly, that view of like bringing that cross section of people in, because all of us are walking around with a little bit of that feeling. And there's this term called Sonder, which someone coined fairly recently in the book of Dictionary of Sorrows, I think it's called, the book, but it's the realization that everyone around you is walking around with their own, like, as the main character in their own play. Like they were all doing that. Not as many people are following like your every move and like staring at you as you think, because we're all doing that. We're all thinking about that happening. I think that's so funny. Stephanie, how does the books so this is the second edition of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about how the books connect back to the work you want to be known for. Joel was talking about, it really is a lot of education. So it's enlightening his prospects to what's possible. They might decide to work with him if they want his coaching and support and consulting. How does your book kind of introduce people to you in your world and the way you show up and offer value?
There's a sentence I have on all of my emails that goes out. It says, "There's no story that can't be healed." And when we make the choice to find our voice, to stand in our power, to no longer be held back by what is sometimes generational dynamics of not speaking up, not speaking out, trying to maintain a certain persona because then we'll fit in. And yet we're meant to fit out. We're not meant to be cookie cutter. So it's really one of, there truly is no story that can't be healed. And so many of us have been affected by childhood trauma, family rules, the silencing of generations of we don't talk about that, or the authoritarian rule. And I find that, I think especially the first edition, which was published 4 years ago, and now even the second, which was published last year, was ahead of its time. Because we see so much now culturally how people are being silenced. And it is more important than ever for us to stand in the power of our voice and to speak from a place of love. It's not one of putting anybody down. It's not one of demeaning anyone. It's speaking from our own truth.
Yeah.
And I am a walking example of that.
So are you pulling them in, hoping to speak, coach, consult? Like, what's the business angle for writing the book?
Initially, there really wasn't one, to be honest. It was, I'm an energy healer, and healing what we've internalized and not been able to speak about is at the core of what I do. I now work with entrepreneurs who are also looking to make the world a better place at a certain point in their healing journey. So were I to use it now for marketing, it is of that. It's okay, you've done all of this work, and now to really build the business that you want to, and that what your soul is calling you to do, there are the deeper layers. And like,
So it's helping you attract the right people. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
sifting through as people read and connect to you, they understand, you understand them. Like, it's an alignment piece for you. And it may not have started with a strong business angle, but it is rooted in the work you were doing. It's just you're called to do it. Lauren, it's the same kind of question. I'm always sort of curious, like, do you have material that goes with your book to help people use it either on their own or in groups? Like, how are people interacting with the content? How did you envision them? Did it change from what you expected?
I think for me, my book's a little bit different. So the most common comment I get is I read it twice. I read it first to get the content and second to do the work, because it's a combination of a book and a workbook all in one. It's really a 7-week framework for how to learn to be empathetic, in the same way that we can teach kids who have autism to recognize the signs and practice the behaviors. If you're not practicing empathy, you're getting worse at it, regardless of who you are, where you sit, whether you have it, whether you don't, and understanding what empathy actually is, because a lot of times people confuse it with other things and think it's just being nice. So I spend a lot of time talking about those kinds of things, and I've done more of small master classes of executives or big keynotes. I've done a couple of workshops, but most of the time it lends itself to really deep intentional conversation about empathy. Recently I did a C-level master class on empathy, and it's interesting to see how similar people view it regardless of where they sit in an organization and what they think it is. And for the executives, the difference really was, but I'm being really empathetic to this one human, and I don't understand why it's not working. And what we learned through that conversation is you're not being empathetic to that person. You're being nice to that person. And what is it doing to the rest of your team when you're doing that? So there's a lot of conversation that happens, but we always think that executives have it all figured out and that they have this capacity to either turn off or turn on empathy, when the reality, when I've dug deeper into it, is a lot of times they don't even understand what it is or how to access it, and how to access it in a way that makes a difference to teams.
So Lauren, is most of your work doing this kind of coaching, like groups, master classes, some keynotes, and then the book kind of helps? Does it get people's attention? Does it draw people to you? Or is it more people start wanting to work with you and then the book becomes a guide for the work? Like, how does the work and the book kind of interact with each other? Chicken and egg, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a really weird combination of things. So it will be anything from I read your book on vacation and I wanted to reach out to you because I need coaching, or I want to bring this into my organization. Do you do small book clubs, working through it, workshops, that kind of stuff? Or can you do a keynote on this? And then maybe a breakout or two related to that. But a lot of times for me, it started with the book and then people finding me because of the book. Versus me having the thing first. I wrote the book first, not even thinking about the thing. I wrote the book because it was cathartic and I needed to get it out. And I wanted other people to know that there was hope if they were in a terrible situation at work, or if they were a leader going. And I would say 9 times out of 10 when I coach executives, probably by the second or third conversation, it's, this is not the leader I wanted to be. When I set out to be a leader, this is not the human being I wanted to be. And that starts a whole other course of other things that the book can come into that practice. But a lot of times for me, it started with the book. Somebody read it or somebody gifted it to somebody and they find me. And that's how the conversation starts. I feel extremely lucky that I have not had to go out and seek things, that they've just sort of happened organically.
You know, you're making, like, you're the exact kind of person I would want to work with in the Author ROI Lab, because we would just like tighten all that up and have it happen organically, but in like a consistent, I don't know, it's like, it's not forced, but like, let's have a conversation about your book too, so that you know where it's leading you. Because so much work, it's so much work to create a book. And now you've all done that. So the fact that you're all like, let's keep writing more books, I'm like, that's great. But now, like, audience, marketing, finding, getting the book into the hands of people who need it most. Joel, how did that unravel for you? Since you didn't, as you said, like, you called yourself sort of an accidental author, but you also were getting feedback that people were into, like, the card deck that you had created. Like, there was definitely some interest drumming up generally, and you followed that thread and it led to this moment. But now, how does the book play into the business?
I'm using it an awful lot. I'm not focused as much on sales, although it's doing moderately well, and I'm not marketing it that much. I'm using it really as an introduction, as a conversation starter. It's funny, I've been doing my solo business now for about 3.5 years, and the first year was, let me create a card game. And I hyper focused on that. And then the second year was, I'm going to do this book, and I hyper focused on that. And this, in year 3, I'm actually developing a software platform that replicates my process, again, to put it in the hands of people who maybe can't bring me on, or I can use it for a lighter touch mentoring coaching, but really give them the meat of the method. And so I'm starting usually with the book. If I have a prospect or somebody who's interested, I'm just giving them the book. I mean, I'm giving it to them digitally, and I mean, I would appreciate people go out and buy it and review it, obviously. But I have this problem that I'm very empathetic, and Lauren, we should talk afterwards, because I will meet a business prospect and then just want to pour my heart out and help them. And so, I was on a podcast several weeks ago for entrepreneurship, and somebody goes, when did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And I said, I'm still not sure I want to be an entrepreneur. I don't really love the business part of it. I don't love the pipeline stuffing and the prospecting. And even though I'm a writer and a content person, I despise content marketing. Because it almost feels to me, when you start to put the formal motions in place, it feels like you disconnect a little bit and it becomes artificial. And a lot of my work is about, even the technical people tapping into your heart and your gut instincts, as opposed to just your brain instincts. And so, yeah, I'm using it an awful lot about, just putting in front of people, sharing with them, saying, here, let me give you at least a bunch of stuff to start with, which in my work with startups, it's all mentoring and pro bono and through some accelerators. And I'm just happy to make it available to them. So this year, I guess going into year 4 is going to be about, let's turn this thing into a machine.
Yeah.
Let's use it.
So one of the ways you were just talking about, you want everyone to have this book before they talk to you and you gift it. It's at the top of my, the page people use to book a call with me, which also has my author services and all testimonials. And the bonus content's there as well. So I just drive everyone to booklaunchbrainstorm.com. But the highest price for my Kindle book year round, the launch your book, is $2.99. I'm not trying to make money on this book. If people don't have $3, I'm like, there's a lot of other things that need to be solved before we talk about a launch plan for their book. So that's the other idea, is having the Kindle price permanently at $4.99 or less, so that it's less of a thought. But if they buy the book and then later decide to leave a review, it's a verified purchase review. And I've also gotten to the point where I actually start the calls now by asking, because I do these 30-minute calls. I'm like, have you read any of my book? Just curious, because I had one woman pick up the book and it had 42 Post-it notes sticking out, and I was like, we're gonna have a good conversation. You're ready for this.
Screenshot.
Yeah, I was like, that was good.
That's a great testimonial.
And then there are the people who are like, I didn't really bother, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to do a lot of explaining and educating on this call. It's just not a good use of our time together for me to have to talk through some of the specifics of just my strategy. I'd rather talk about it specific to their situation. And I think that's another way a book can pull people in, get them thinking in a certain way. So yeah, it's I mean, this is why the Kindle flash sale was so helpful, because it got all of our books to a wider range of audiences without us overtly being promotional about our book. We're not because we're constantly talking to our audience about our stuff, or maybe we aren't, and we keep thinking we should be talking more often about it. I'm actually curious, Stephanie, you've done this Kindle flash sale a few times, so give us some feedback. You clearly want this book, The Impact of Silence, to be seen and absorbed and reacted to by a wider audience. How is the Kindle flash sale helping you meet your goals around the book?
One of the biggest things is that people who aren't necessarily in the healing space read it and provided amazing reviews. And so the impact to people who aren't necessarily looking for this type of book, because it really is there's something there for everyone. And that was getting it into the hands of people who wouldn't necessarily be looking for it and yet are curious, was one of the biggest things. And for me also, being exposed to books that I wouldn't necessarily be looking for, and yet here was this group, this tranche of amazing books by amazing authors. And then we got to read each other's materials, and it helps you, I think, get into the mindset and the thought processes of other people. And so one of the other things as well is we all come upon people on our path who could use one of the books that we've read. And so it really is the 6 degrees of separation, or how we can share it of hey, I read this book. It might be something that would be of interest to you. And so we never really know where it's going to land. And that's part of the magic of it.
I want to give a shout out to Stacy Larson. I believe she's one of your reviewers as I'm looking at this. She took it. She was one of the authors, and she wrote a book about the leadership dance, but she took it upon herself to reach out to people in her network and suggest a specific book to them from the campaign, and then say, oh, and by the way, there's dozens of books on sale. And she came on and talked to me about how she did that. And for her, it was a good reason to reach back out to people and not just be like broadcast, like, here's this link, go buy dozens of books, but be like, oh, like I came across this book and either I read it or made me think of you, or like, I think you'd be interested, and here's the link to all the rest of them. And that just ignited conversations for her. So she was using the Kindle Flash Sale even more creatively to just continue to engage her network in a thoughtful way. So I want to always remind people of that, because I think you don't have to be an author to do that. Like, you could be someone who comes across the Kindle Flash Sale and decides, oh, hey, these books are on sale for a few days. Let me think about a dozen people that I'm going to send a message to and point out a single book and be like, hey, you should check out The Impact of Silence. Like, that is a great way to move forward.
And I think too, it's like we've written books based on our experience, but we don't know where people are and what's necessarily going to resonate with them. And that's part of the fascinating thing too, of like, we've taken the time and the effort, and writing a book is a lot of, there's a lot of love put into all of the ones that I've read that have been part of these sales. And we really just never know how it's going to impact or resonate with someone. And that's been some of the surprising thing about the reviews as well, is to see people's responses. So it's letting go of the expectation of how it's going to resonate with someone. It's offering these books to the world, and it will be received by the exact people who are meant to see it and read it.
Joel, this was your first time, right? Going through it. What was your, well, first, how did you hear about it? And then second, what was sort of your takeaways from being part of this author community?
So I saw somebody that I'm connected with through my book group. So I self-published with Book Launchers, and so we've got a nice little community there. And somebody mentioned it, and I signed up just immediately. I was just like, this is, I know this is something I'm going to need some help with. I'm again big about community, so I immediately signed up. I will say I probably wasn't quite as engaged at the when we ran it, because it was my wedding anniversary that week. So but it really was amazing to me to see all the people who came together. The side chat in LinkedIn was so much fun. Just discovering people's books, and the books that I did read, they enriched my thinking even about my own book, which I thought was great, because I think you set us up in these kind of pods with similar subjects, and they were all sort of adjacent, and I'm like, yes, that's what I'm saying in my book, and I love the way they said it here, and that was what was most amazing to me. And then on the tail end, got some sales. Reviews are starting to work. I mean, like you said, my book's been out for about a year. And it, like you say, it's hard for us to talk about our own stuff. So it's hard for me to ask for reviews. I'm getting so much better at it when I'm meeting people. And you always have to say an honest review, because like you said, otherwise Amazon will smack you down.
Honest reviews, helpful reviews.
Honest reviews. And as they're coming in, and I recognize some people from my network, or from the Kindle Flash Sale, but when I see a review from somebody I've got no contact with and I don't recognize, that's the most exciting thing.
It totally is.
And I think we're all just kind of at the mercy of our networks most of the time, when we're like, I'm going to do this myself, and it's when we give ourselves over to the community and someone like yourself who really knows. I mean, I kind of poo-pooed the muscle movements and the formal machinations earlier, but they're important. And, recognizing that and working with somebody like you was it was a treat. It was so much fun.
Well, 3 times a year. So anyone who's listening who's like, what are they even talking about? You can go to kindleflashsale.com to find the waitlist. If I'm not actively running a campaign or accepting authors for a campaign. Lauren, I'm curious how this ties in with how you think about getting your book into the hands of the people who need it most. As Stephanie was just saying, how did you think of these audiences? It's not just one, it's like our collective audience being a good fit for the book you'd written.
I found not just great authors and great books and a great experience, but people that I'm friends with now still that I made through this. And for me, it's helping me. I can't wait to do another one because marketing gives me the ick. I have this sort of guttural distaste for marketing because I am in my book and in my marketing of myself. I don't ever want to be the person that's like, look at me, look what I can do. It just is contrary to everything that I believe in as a human being. So even with Amazon, it's easy to get seduced by that bestseller niche category sticker. But in reality, to me, success is usage, not purchase. And I was listening to Joel talk about pro bono work, and my business model is 25% pro bono because I want to give back to the world in some meaningful way. And that bestseller badge might feed my ego, and that is very temporary. But a book that changes how people treat each other makes a much bigger difference in my mind. And you want people to say, wow, that was a brilliant book. It's so human. Really validation seeking. But when you realize the success is when somebody who used to lead through fear or micromanagement sends you a note and says, you know what, this hit me really hard and it made me look inside myself and it made me change. That to me is success. It's from trying really hard to prove that empathy works to watching leaders build that muscle so they can execute it naturally. That is a much better success for me because I am not the TikToker or the video maker. So I knew that was not going to be the way that I got anything done.
Yeah.
My best sales strategy is doing interactive zero BS keynotes, podcasts, workshops where we dissect real life problems that people are experiencing.
Well, I have a book suggestion for you, and the good news is Sophie Lackner is often in these Kindle flash sales, almost every one since her book came out. It's called Unlock Your Impact: The Roadmap to Magnetic Client Attraction for Entrepreneurs Who Hate Marketing.
I'm writing it down right now.
Yeah. So she's great. She's really smart.
If only we were recording this.
Yeah,
right?
Really smart. But this is the thing, like you run into those kinds of folks. Like you find people who understand your desire to have, like she says she works with mission-driven entrepreneurs. And so it's not about like blowhard, like just, I don't know, like just, taking selfies on the beach or whatever. Like it's not that stuff. And it's also, to your point, like bestseller status, I've hit it 37 times across 4 books in 4 countries during the launch. I've hit it dozens of times since then that I don't even count because I just do these spike sales 3 times a year. So it happens all the time. But none of that changed like the success of my business, how much money was in my bank account, like how people even thought about the success of the book. But the fact that you would go to my last book and out of 264 global ratings, there are 260 written reviews, that is lasting social proof. And it also helps the algorithm make my book more discoverable. And so it's validation as those reviews come in, but it's also staying there for future readers to think, oh, is this book going to be good for me? And one of my favorite reviews is actually a negative review on my book about how to use Zoom effectively. It was a 1-star review and they wrote wokeness at its best. And that was the title of it. I can't remember the exact sentence. It was a 1-sentence line. But basically they were upset because a book about using Zoom effectively addressed difference. It addressed the fact that we, approach communication and how we might navigate, breakout rooms. And we need to a design for that. We have to accommodate. And when we do, we all benefit. Like everyone benefits from having structure and agendas, like not just the people who need them, but everyone benefits from them. So yeah, and I'm thinking there are people who saw the 1-star review and wait, how does this book have wokeness? And then they're curious and then they want to go check it out. So I'm like, great, thank you so much. This makes my book stand out amongst all the books on Zoom. So as we wrap up here, Stephanie, how can people find you and follow your work? Thanks so much for being here.
The best way is via my website, which is wayofthediamondwarrior.com.
Fantastic.
And from there, it's links and information to everything.
Great. We're going to actually have a whole bunch of links for you, also including your website, your LinkedIn, your book, all at bizbookpubhub.com. Lauren, how about you? How can people find you and follow your work?
Most of the time, it's LinkedIn is probably the best way to get to me.
All right. So don't forget, folks, send a message to Lauren when you reach out. Just let her know what you're thinking about and what you're founder. And Joel, how about you?
So if you just go to nerdthattalksgood.com, it's .com official. That'll forward you over to my consulting and my speaking. But likewise, LinkedIn. If you look for Nerd That Talks Good on LinkedIn, you'll find me and say hello.
I love the branding. We put all these links in the show notes at bizbookpubhub.com. You'll also find over 500 archived episodes that you can check out their show notes as well. A curated directory of a couple dozen experts who will guide authors along their author journey, writing, editing, publishing, launching, and marketing. We have free virtual networking events for writers and speakers. And our Kindle Flash sales, a nascent blog we're just getting started with, and so much more. Check it all out at bizbookpubhub.com. Panel, again, thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.